Good afternoon. My name is Steve Kidd, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Humanities Alliance. Thanks so much for joining us today for the National Endowment for the Humanities, Revitalizing Indigenous American Languages. We will be joined a little later in the hour by Representative Judy Chu from California's 27th District, whose office is co-sponsoring this event. Representative Chu will offer some words on the great impact of these programs. We are grateful for her support of this event and for her support of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Now, I am pleased to introduce Shelly Lowe, Chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities, to offer some introductory remarks. Prior to her appointment by President Biden, Chair Lowe served as Executive Director of the Harvard University Native American Program, Assistant Dean in the Yale College Dean's Office, Director of the Native American Cultural Center at Yale University, and the Graduate Education Program Facilitator for the American Indian Studies programs at the University of Arizona. As a recent profile in Humanities magazine made clear, Chair Lowe's focus on Native American education is grounded in the cultural and educational context in which she was raised. A citizen of the Navajo Nation, Chair Lowe grew up on the Navajo Reservation in Ganado, Arizona, where she reports it was common to hear both Navajo and English being spoken wherever you went. This environment where language and culture were central to community informed the intellectual path that she took throughout her education, where she sought to understand the social and political context that created the Navajo Reservation and the forces that affected pathways to education for Native students. These experiences subsequently informed her work as an advocate for funding for language revitalization during her time on the National Humanities Council before she was appointed NEH chair. Please join me in welcoming Chair Lowe.
Thank you, Steve, for that kind introduction. And my great thanks to you and the National Humanities Alliance for bringing us together today. Shelly Lowe Yanishia, Belagana Nishle, Nanastiji Tachi, Bashichi, Belagana Dashichedo, Kabaha Dashanale, Lokantiel de Nasha. Greetings to everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, especially to our relatives and colleagues who are joining us from Hawai'i. It's so nice for you to join us early in the morning. My name is Shelly Lowe. I am chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities. And as you all well know, the National Endowment for the Humanities, or NEH, is an independent federal agency and one of the largest funders of humanities programs in the United States. The issue of tribal languages and their importance to arts, culture, and community is of immense personal and professional importance to me. As Stephen mentioned, I grew up on the Navajo Reservation in rural Northeast Arizona. And the history, traditions, and values I carry with me were formed in the place that I call home. And although I absorbed plenty of Navajo culture at home, at church, at school, and from the many families that were part of my community in the town of Ganado, Arizona, I remain a lifelong and continuing Navajo language learner. While my parents' generation grew up hearing Navajo spoken at home by elders, my generation grew up with an emphasis on education grounded in speaking English and only English at school and at home. The Navajo I heard as a child came through listening to conversations among elders or in the words of prayers and hymns at church. It was not until I left Ganado for the University of Arizona that I had the opportunity to formally study Navajo. And yet, compared to so many other tribes, the Navajo Nation is fortunate in that we still have speakers for whom Navajo is their first language. On this continent, the history of indigenous languages is one of erasure and loss, both through episodes of brute force and through slow erosion. In many communities, our elders are the only remaining native speakers of tribal languages. and younger generations may feel as though they need to leave behind their native culture in order to seek economic and educational opportunity. When we lose a language, we lose all the knowledge, history, and values of that culture that are embedded in the language. Our languages are rooted in the places we call home and our identity as a community. The product of the ideas and experiences of generations after generations of our ancestors, languages are living knowledge and carry in them the spirit of our peoples. I know that many Indigenous words have no equivalent in English because the beliefs and ideas they express come from a long place-based tradition that created a unique way of thinking about the world. One thing that has always amazed me is the number of Tlingit words and phrases for different kinds of snow. Having grown up in Arizona, where it does snow, or at least it used to snow, I only knew snow as a single thing, something that I now dig my car out of in Boston. But for Tlingit, every gradation and granular distinction has meaning and direct impact on their daily lives and livelihood. From powder to sludge, it can determine what the day's conditions for hunting will be and which trails and passageways are safe to cross. At the National Endowment for the Humanities, we fund numerous initiatives that support the documentation, preservation, and revitalization of Native languages. Through a 17-year partnership with the National Science Foundation, NEH and NSF's Documenting Endangered Languages grant program funds linguistic fieldwork, research and analysis, and the preparation of materials on the thousands of languages across the globe at risk of loss. Through this program, NEH has funded the creation of a Penobscot dictionary, the documentation of dialects spoken by different communities of Mississippi Choctaw, and the development of a Hawaiian spoken language repository, among many other projects. This program is also helping save and reclaim some of the cultural knowledge encoded in Indigenous languages, such as a project surveying the Huat and Totonac communities in Mexico about their knowledge and use of local plant life in cooking and medicine. This project is producing both materials to help in the revitalization of those tribal languages, while also preserving traditional ethnobotanical knowledge for scientists. NEH also partnered with the First Nations Development Institute in Colorado to provide financial support to approximately 40 Native language immersion programs across the country. This initiative has helped strengthen tribal-led language programs, transmitting language and culture to new generations of Nez Perce, Salish, Crow, Lakota, Ojibwe, and Native Hawaiian speakers. NEH grants also help Indigenous groups preserve their cultural heritage and share their stories with the American public. Through a partnership with the Association of Tribal Archives, Libraries, and Museums, NEH distributed $3.6 million in American Rescue Plan recovery funding to 84 cultural organizations, including language programs, tribal preservation offices, community centers, and museums across 25 states to help them retain staff and maintain programs to preserve and bring awareness to Native American cultural heritage. As NEH chair, my priority is to expand opportunities for all Americans to participate and benefit from humanities-based research, education, preservation, and public programs, and to make sure that the agency's grant programs and the projects we fund reflect the full and rich diversity of this country's histories, voices, experiences, and cultures. Throughout my time at the agency, I look forward to working closely with tribal groups and institutions to make sure Indigenous voices and stories are heard, and that the languages they belong to remain living, spoken languages. Thank you again to the NHA for organizing today's program and for all the work you do to support the humanities day in and day out. I would like to now turn the program over to Mariel.
Thank you so much, Chair Lowe. We have rearranged the program a little bit, and we are so pleased to welcome Representative Judy Chu from California's 27th District, the co-sponsor of our event today, to say a few words of welcome. Representative Chu.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm Congresswoman Judy Chu, representing California's 27th District, and I'm chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, or what we call CAPAC. I want to thank the National Endowment for the Humanities for the invitation to speak today ahead of this important briefing showcasing your vast support for Indigenous American languages. CAPAC is proud to co-sponsor this briefing, and I look forward to learning more about your critical work to further protect these landmark languages, which trace their roots deep into this land. With 143 of the 216 languages spoken by Native communities listed as endangered, we must strive to provide resources and support to preserve and document the language and culture of those who have called this country home for centuries. In my home state of California, I'm proud to say the NEH has supported documentation efforts for many California Native languages, including Kato, Kashaya, Achumawi, and Konkau. We in Congress have a duty to provide federal support to help progress research that will better tell the stories and history of Indigenous Americans, including Native Hawaiians. Last May, I was proud to cast my vote in support of the American Rescue Plan, which it did include $3.3 million to Native cultural organizations across the nation. These federal dollars are hard at work to ensure we do not lose any more pieces of the mosaic, making up the rich cultural fabric of our country, spanning from its origins to present day. As chair of CAPAC, I want to especially name how important the preservation of our community's language and cultures is to us. And I also want to specifically commend your work related to language preservation for the Native Hawaiian community. Additionally, we in CAPAC remain committed to not only uplifting NHPI communities and government, but contributing to preserving the cultures members of our caucus represent, from Asian American to Pacific Islander to Native Hawaiians. And most recently, at the end of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, President Biden signed into law a bill led by Congresswoman Grace Meng that provides for the first time a commission to study the creation of a national museum to highlight the history, culture, and contributions of the AANHPI community. As we move forward, we can draw from efforts such as these to revitalize the way we view and study Indigenous American history. And I'm eager to continue being a member of Congress that is a partner with you to do that. So thank you again to the National Endowment for the Humanities for all the work you are doing to uplift Indigenous communities and helping them to share their history and preserve their culture for many, many generations to come. We cannot let such knowledge slip through the cracks of history and be lost in time. And to those who every day support these efforts, thank you for your dedication and documentation of such an important aspect of not only our American history, but our global history. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Representative Chu and Chair Lowe, for your kind words about the importance of these programs. I am Mariella Aquino, and I am the Research Fellow for Community Initiatives at the National Humanities Alliance. During this briefing, we will be learning about how, as you have learned, the NEH helps preserve and revitalize endangered Indigenous American languages. We'll be hearing from 3 presenters today about their work in this field. Their projects showcase the innovation and effort required to document and preserve a language for the future. They also show the deep impacts of language revitalization work on the communities they serve. First, we will be hearing from Mr. Daryl Baldwin, who will be speaking about the Myaamia Center at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and the National Breath of Life Archival Institute for Indigenous Languages, which is housed there. Mr. Baldwin is a citizen of the Miami Tribe of Oklahoma and is the founding director of the Myaamia Center. Mr. Baldwin's work in language revitalization was recognized in 2016 with a fellowship from the MacArthur Foundation, and he currently serves on the National Council for the Humanities. Next, Dr. Larry L. Kimura and Mr. Bruce Torres Fischer will speak about their work with the Kaniʻa, Voices of the Land Spoken Hawaiian Language Repository at the University of Hawaii, Hilo. Dr. Kimura is an associate professor of Hawaiian language at Kahakaʻula o Ke'elikolani College of Hawaiian Language at the University of Hawaii, Hilo, and a co-principal investigator for the Kaniʻa project. He also serves as the chairperson of the Hawaiian Lexicon Committee under the college's Hale Kuamo'o Hawaiian Language Center, which focuses on Hawaiian curriculum development and teacher licensing for K-12 Hawaiian immersion programs. Mr. Torres Fischer is the lead archivist for the Kaniʻa project. He is a master's student in Hawaiian language and literature at Kahakaʻula o Ke'elikolani and enjoys producing educational digital content about the Hawaiian language and culture, such as the UH Hilo podcasts, Lohe'ia and Kaleo o Ka'uluau, through various, in addition to other platforms. Finally, Ms. Audra Vincent will speak about the Coeur d'Alene Online Language Resource Center, or COLRC. Ms. Vincent is a member of the Coeur d'Alene tribe and runs Nakwekwelen, the tribe's language revitalization program. She is also a Coeur d'Alene language teacher. She holds an MA in linguistics from the University of British Columbia. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to start off our conversation with a few questions. So I'll have one question and then each person will answer it before opening up the floor to our audience. If you have questions for our speakers, please place them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. All right, so first question. Can you tell me about your programs? How has the NEH funding helped your work? And let's start with Daryl.
Well, I am Myaamia Nipwa Yone Konengonja Myaamia Mission Nipwanda Koningi. Greetings from the Myaamia Center at Miami University. I want to first thank Chair Lowe and Representative Chu for your comments. I also would like to extend my appreciation to the Humanities Alliance for the opportunity to participate in this briefing. And I also want to recognize the excellent work by my colleagues here on the call from Hawaii and Coeur d'Alene. To begin, I want to take a moment and contextualize our work a little bit. The Myaamia language fell dormant and lost its last generation of native speakers sometime during the mid-20th century. However, the language is fortunate in that it has a vast archival written records far more exceeding than many Native American languages, and which span nearly 270 years. These records consist of several thousand pages of materials, which will take many years, maybe a few generations of analysis for the full reconstruction of the language. Crucial documents for the reconstruction of the Myaamia language are scattered at archives throughout North America in places such as Maryland, Indiana, Philadelphia, Berkeley, California, Chicago, Providence, Rhode Island, Hartford, Connecticut, and Montreal, Canada. Since 1988, this language has undergone a significant revitalization effort that draws from this extensive documentation. Using technology and developing a community-curated digital archive allowed us to engage with these language materials in a way that more directly supports our revitalization efforts. Archival content in its original form is not always easily accessible or ready for use in educational programs. In many cases, we have to develop our own tools of the trade, meaning that off-the-shelf archival software does not typically meet our unique community needs to work with these documents and make the materials more useful to revitalization efforts. Beginning in 2012, the NEH supported the Myaamia Center in the development of an online software platform innovatively created to house our extensive Myaamia language archival materials. For the first time ever, digital copies of our language materials have been created and are now coming together into one archive where Myaamia language specialists and teachers can work from them for revitalization purposes. This software continues in development over the last 10 years and today has come to be known as the Indigenous Languages Digital Archive, or what we call ILDA. ILDA allows us to consolidate, organize, store, retrieve, and analyze digitized materials specifically for the purpose of informing tribal language revitalization and educational efforts. By pairing images and sound files of original documentation alongside transcribed versions of these same materials, ILDA creates a searchable database which serves as a conduit between the archival materials and language revitalization staff. The software is built around its powerful search function and offers multi-dialect support, metadata tagging, and the ability to display linguistic analysis. This software platform is also uniquely designed to provide content to a growing base of educational tools, such as an online dictionary, an ethnobotanical database, and other educational software still in development. Development of our digital archive infrastructure as a tribe is critical for capacity building efforts that directly support a growing number of tribal educational programs across stages.
Thank you so much, Daryl. Bruce and Larry, could you tell us about Kaniʻa?
Yes, Velina Kealoha Kakoa Pau. Thank you very much for this opportunity because of our NEH grant to document and digitize these treasures of our voices of our last native speaking Hawaiian, traditional Hawaiian speakers into this repository named Kaniʻa, or Voices of Our Land. And it comes at a very vital time as we count our very last native Hawaiian speakers. When we started over 40 years ago, we estimated about 2,000 of our traditional native Hawaiian speakers who were all mostly in their senior years, except for one small little population living on a privately owned island here in Hawaii of about 200 people. So they have moved off of that island since the 1980s and are now facing the same situation as all endangered languages in mainstream. And for Hawaii, of course, mainstream is within the English language and culture. So today, we're counting less than 20, and there would be more like not the strongest as compared, say, to, for example, my grandparents who were born in the 1800s. These people would be, of course, born more in the 1900s. And so 20 or so, and maybe from that little isolated island, it's just dwindling very quickly, as you can all predict, in the tremendous impact of mainstream in English. So here in Hawaii, of course, we have tackled this concern by, first of all, bringing our language back into the home through our youngest speakers. The youngest we could get hold of would be, of course, our preschool and even infant toddler, months old from birth. And the main challenge, of course, was to convince our own people, our parents, that this is something very valuable for all of us. And of course, many of us still, back then and even now, begin to worry about English. Well, if we're going to be immersing our child just in Hawaiian, what about learning? Well, English is fine. Not only English, but other languages. Multilingual speakers. But of course, our major focus is learning our language to sustain our own our own cultural identity as Hawaiian. And in Hawaii, of course, we have a great lesson to share with the world on multi-cultures here in Hawaii, multi-languages here in Hawaii. But still, Hawaiian is the indigenous or native language of this place. And so we survived till today. Officially, I guess you could say, well, 40 years ago when we initiated it, our preschool programs, the Punanaleo schools, then continue up until now, and continuing into public education in 1987, what the Department of Education now calls the Hawaiian Immersion Program, Kula Kayapuni, that was started in 1987 and continues today with now 2022, 2022 high school graduation. So we call the program preschool through 12th grade, P12, and then continuing on into tertiary or college education. And it was through our efforts connected to community work that proceeded to establish our degrees at the college level. First of all, of course, our bachelor's undergraduate degree in Hawaiian language and Hawaiian studies, Hawaiian culture, and of course, proceeding on to the first master's and PhD programs here at the University, at the College of Hawaiian Language at the University of Hawaii Hilo campus. I have my emblem back there, Hilo, not necessarily where the jet planes land on Oahu, Honolulu, the capital city. So this has proceeded now with our efforts in Hawaiian language revitalization through the Institute of Formal Education by using our language as the medium of instruction so that our language can live for today and tomorrow into the modern times. It's wonderful to have documentation to support this bringing our language back into current and into future times. Our language documentation will always be there. We can just press the little button, digitizing our language, and hear it over and over and over, and use it in all the myriad ways of language preservation available to us today, with the encouragement, of course, of the new innovations going on with technology. It's just a marvelous time to be using our language in this way. So mahalo nui loa, as we say in Hawaii, to the NEH grant that was received and continue to enjoy, and will continue to, flourish in our use in bringing our language back to its full strength. And we have much more to do, so we can talk about that, I guess, a little later, but mahalo nui.
Thank you so much. Oh, yes, go ahead, Bruce.
Mahalo. Aloha kako. I know time is short, so I'm going to condense what I prepared and just say that Larry really laid out the context. And Kaniʻa, the Kaniʻa project plays the key role of providing the documentation, those voices of native speakers. So as Larry mentioned, there are very few. So people of my age and my generation are considered lucky if we ever get the chance to allow or to interact with a native speaker. Most people learn language in college and or through their preschool to high school immersion education. But Kaniʻa is working on finding those records of native speakers, mostly audio and video records, digitizing them and going through all of that work. And as Daryl mentioned, it can also be kind of a challenge in the software that we have today, and the technology isn't necessarily adapted. So I think it's inspiring to hear we're forced to be innovative and really solve these types of problems, both technologically and culturally, as we interact and bring this type of thing into the modern era so we can have it as a community resource. But to sum up my section of this, especially here in Hawaii, is a treasure. It's worth more than diamonds and gold because we don't have the native speakers. And for revitalizing the Hawaiian language, really everything is contained here to strengthen the language, and it contains all of our cultural and linguistic information. And it's just so very important that we preserve it and make it accessible. That's what we do at Kaniʻa, or what we're working on doing. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Audra.
He's graceful Audra Vincent, Chinstitsunch. My name's Audra. I am a Coeur d'Alene tribal member. I'm thankful to be here with all of you today. So Coeur Coeur d'Alene language, we are a language that lost our last fluent speaker in 2018. I didn't grow up with the language because of my grandparents and my dad being in the boarding school. So my generation was a generation that we didn't have a lot of language or a lot of culture taught within the home or community. I started learning it from a fluent speaker when I was in high school. And after high school, I knew our language situation and I wanted to study linguistics because I knew we're heading towards not having speakers. And I knew we had documentation that I couldn't understand, So I wanted to do linguistics as a tool to help with what was going to come. So the NEH funding helped us to update our online archive. It was started in 2019 as a summer project that a linguist did with a grad student, and he did it really quickly. And this version is going to add all the materials that we found since then. Starting around 2016, I started looking places for our materials, like knowing linguists that worked on our language and saying, okay, they were at this university, and looking at those archives there and seeing what was there, or looking at finding out so-and-so deposited the materials here. So we started that search and found materials at University of Washington, Smithsonian, the American Philosophical Society, and in someone's personal collection. So we're able to get those, but it was like a lot of field notes, notebooks, reels, different recordings that we had to get digitized and get copies of. So that was like our new materials, but we also have internal materials from the last fluent speakers. The program here started recording mid-90s, early 2000s. They would have informal meetings where the last 5 fluent speakers came and just recorded. So they would try to do that weekly, and that was about 10 years, almost weekly recordings. They're about 4 hours each, just, sitting in various formats. So we had cassettes, we had about 10 years of mini discs, which cracks me up still, and DVDs, cassettes, all those things. So we had to get those digitized as well. And also like different recordings from like earlier decades when they were trying to preserve history and language as well. So we had so much materials that since we had this archive already, we wanted to update it to add these materials and add the audio to the materials so that we can have a place where our teachers and workers can access this, but also learners. And we also had to process them, because when you look at old documentation, it's not readable just by anybody, because it's in a linguistic alphabet, or it's linguistic analysis, or it's just handwritten cursive. So we had to go through all those and switch them to our alphabet and make them usable for other people. So this whole process, we've been working on those to update our archive and add everything that we could find. So, Lima.
Thank you so much. Okay, given as we are running a little short on time, I'm going to move on to our third question, skip the second one. And can you tell us a little bit, we've heard a little bit about this, but can you all tell us a little bit more about how these programs contribute to language revitalization? And are there any projects that have grown out of the work that you've been able to do? Why don't we, let's go the same order. Daryl, go ahead.
Well, I would start by saying we expect that there's a growing need among tribal communities to build community curated language archives, as we've already just heard. But training in archival management and learning how to integrate archival content into community directed educational programs are just require a wide range of skill sets. Over the last 20 years, we've seen a significant increase in the need to not only document critically endangered language, as well as communities needing to use these archival resources to support language activities. In 2019, a global survey of language revitalization efforts found that of the 245 revitalization efforts worldwide, 1 in 5 languages are now relying solely on archival materials to support their activities. If this trend continues, NEH programs such as those from the Division of Preservation and Access will likely become more important. I guess for me, in closing, I'd like to point out that it's only been 30 years since the passage of the 1990 Native American Languages Act. More time is needed for capacity building, training, and development that support language efforts. This work will simply take time and resources, but tribal communities are responding and slowly building capacity to meet their specific language needs and goals. Over time, and through the efforts we've made, many of us have been observing positive outcomes at the community level. We know that when a child enters a learning environment where their heritage language and culture are valued and included as a medium of instruction, they perform better academically. Formal assessment and evaluation work within the Myaamia Center has documented increased graduation rates among our Myaamia tribal students at Miami University from 56% in the 1990s, and this was prior to the 2003 campus implementation of language and cultural education, to a 6-year graduation rate today of nearly 92%. We've also documented increased youth engagement in the tribal community, increased sharing of cultural knowledge that strengthens identity, and growing evidence that revitalization impacts community health and well-being. As the body of assessment research continues to grow, we will deepen our understanding of the impact this important work has on our lives as Indigenous people. It's important to note that although high levels of fluency may be the goal for many, there are still positive outcomes at the community level for efforts that are not currently focusing on such levels of language proficiency, such as the case for the Myaamia effort. And of course, we welcome continued support from all directions to aid us in what has become a healing process for many of our tribal communities. Shaya.
Thank you so much. Bruce and Larry?
Yes, I guess the thrust of the documentation project makes available, as I said earlier, hearing our native speakers, whether it's through the format of our videos or film or of course, audio recordings. And for many of our younger new speakers of our Hawaiian language, they have never encountered a live native speaker. So this has become a major resource to connect, and connect for many of them. Many have expressed that that's my great grandmother that you have, or that's my grandfather. I never heard them. And that kind of inspiration for that person, that child, that family is immeasurable. And we are so grateful that we could share those voices in that way. Beyond, of course, for its one of its major uses right now, of course, is for the target audience that we are targeting, of course, are the learners of our language. And it has been proven through our statistics online that our Hawaiian medium schools, Hawaiian immersion schools, are the main users throughout the weekday, school day. And so we are counting on that again as we begin our new school year, with over 3,800 students enrolled, continuing in our Hawaiian medium program throughout the state, with over 23 sites, school sites. And of course, it's very important. The core here is to get our teachers, who are all going to be now second language learners. Some are becoming first, because over 40-year span, we have regenerated new native speakers through second language, very fluent second language parents. So we are creating over 600 new native speakers in their 20s and 30s, young speakers. So they are raising their children. So we're into the, well, I guess you could say over the 40, 50 years, we have 2 generations going, maybe 3 already. So it is integral to begin to connect to our standard that we want to maintain, and we're engaging, of course, in the new world. So we use these standards to assist in maintaining our new word connections or new terms that we need to begin to compose and utilize in, as I was mentioning here in Hawaii, the thrust, the point of the spear, as we're calling it, in the institution of formal learning, so that we use our language as the medium of instruction. Therefore, we have the sovereignty of our education through our own language. And it's just not doing translations directly from English into Hawaiian. No, we're using our philosophy of Hawaiian education, and our language is the medium. And as we all know, language is so important to humankind. And for us as a people, we know our own language is the mainstay of who we are. And if we do not continue that, then we will not be here anymore. And this is why we're talking about endangerment and how we can strengthen this. And so the National Endowment for Humanities has played a very crucial part in supporting this hope for life for our languages, that we can become part of mainstream and participate through our own language.
I'll just add on that. Mahalo for sharing that. And as the team manager in the Kaniʻa office and as a student worker myself, I cannot overstate the unique opportunity and very, very rich experience that student workers and interns experienced here in the Kaniʻa office, because this work provides them or us with new skills in archiving and technology. And most importantly, we get to strengthen our knowledge of the language, as well as gain a larger awareness of the Hawaiian language revitalization movement and how we can play a more active role as future leaders. And although archiving isn't always the most exciting thing to engage in for everyone, for some people it's exciting, but it really is truly a privilege and an unrivaled experience for us young speakers of the Hawaiian language looking to strengthen our olelo or speech. And also, very quickly, I was asked to share, Mariel did her research and she found out about some podcasts that's related to this. So I'm also fortunate, in addition to working on Kaniʻa, to be a co-host and one of the founders of Lohe'ia, which means to be heard or to listen, even sort of as a command. The first all in Hawaiian podcast that sort of talks about what we hear in the archives and also talks about new subjects. And that's myself and 2 of my friends who are also students here at the college in Hilo. And that also serves as a resource in addition to archive, building on that material and bringing a modern sort of fresh digital media for speakers today, as well as Kaleo Kauluwau, another podcast produced here at UH Hilo that talks about Hawaiian language and culture in English, but it really draws upon these resources and educating the public and the community about places and stories and sharing those.
And also, Bruce, don't forget now we have this major project on crowdsourcing for transcribing, hundreds and hundreds of hours. What is the total that we have right now? 1,000 something. But the importance of, ironically, to say that we're going to have it written out as much as we can. However, transcription does connect very much to audio, especially for today's time in our endangerment.
In the next few months, Kaniʻa will be releasing a built from scratch new platform that will allow the public, the Hawaiian speaking public, to log on to the Kaniʻa website and transcribe material So having that those transcribed programs and having everyone participate lets the public and the community contribute to one another, so we can have that digital resource and have it searchable for research and education and for families. And we're very excited that we'll be able to have this crowdsourcing feature soon.
Yep. And the main reward is no money involved, but you can become enriched and learn right there for free by just doing some work.
Great, thank you so much. Audra?
So the program really helps a lot with our revitalization because, like I said, we don't have fluent speakers anymore or people who grew up with the language. So these recordings and materials are essentially our speakers now. We can't go ask somebody, how do I say this? Or what does this mean or anything? So we have to like ask the documentation or go through the recordings. And so by having this archive, we're able to put these materials in one place. We're able, this then let us to digitize materials that we didn't know were out there or that we already had that weren't digitized, so that we can preserve them for future generations. Because like Daryl said, like this is gonna be a long process. Like I'm kind of the main person that does like the archival part and the recording, editing and all that. So this it's gonna take a while to do all this, but this is gonna be for us, but I imagine this to be for all the future people who are gonna work on the language as well, so that they can have access to these materials. We use this daily. The people here that teach the language, we use this to research the language, to look up different words and phrases, to try to understand sentence structures or different linguistic things about the language. We use these materials, but we also go through these materials when we're developing lessons or developing handouts or doing translations and curriculum. And there's 4 of us here, we're all teachers, so we all use this to teach and develop our classroom materials. And we also have a teacher in our tribal school who uses this as well for their teaching. And one of the different projects came out of this, mostly relating to digitizing. And we've had like digitizing all of our mini discs and digitizing all the reels and all those like little projects. But one also was working with the first linguist who worked on our language was Gladys Reichardt, and she gathered about 50 like stories, coyote stories, and they mainly just been sitting because they're written in her alphabet, and no one likes to look at her alphabet because it's so different than our alphabet. And with this project, we hired one of my language students to help work on those stories, and me and her would go back and forth and work through the stories to get them into our current alphabet. So we hired her part-time through this project, and then eventually our tribe put her on full-time. So she's a language teacher here now, but we also still are working through those stories and plan to have those available for our community as well.
Thank you so much. All right, we have some questions from the audience. So first, how are projects like yours sharing best practices with others who are revitalizing Indigenous languages, both within our country and internationally?
Well, may I just start that in Hawaii, we are part of the Polynesian languages in the Pacific here. And we have, since 1990, formed an association called the Polynesian Languages Forum. And we do meet and share ideas, exchange ideas, and this concept of our new technology. And it's wonders of making things possible has been very much a part of our discussion. And in fact, our next meeting coming up, I believe in September in Tahiti, will be about how we can incorporate our languages, because we're the same language family, and how we can exchange better, maybe through technology, and of course using our repositories to help with the how do I one area is the coming up with keeping up with the times, new terms and concepts, yes, and how we can help each other in that way. And that's one example, of course, and we are. I just want to remind our people that we have our next international conference on language documentation conservation coming up, the 8th one, I believe that's it, in the beginning of March. So please check out your internet and notices about that conference, because it brings together, conferences bring together a lot of people, and we can share ideas and what we're up to.
Thank you.
I guess I would respond to that question by saying, even though the vast majority of our work through the Myaamia Center is tribe specific, responding to the needs of our own community, we recognize that we need to make contributions to the field. We need to support the growth of ideas, new technologies. And the primary way that we do that is through the National Breath of Life program, which is housed within the Myaamia Center. And since its inception in 2011, National Breath of Life has worked with 137 community researchers representing 65 different endangered language communities to support their access, acquisition, and use of archival materials held in the rich archives located in the DC area in order to support their community's revitalization goals. And this training has been directly supported through the Dynamic Language Infrastructure Documented Endangered Languages Program, which is a partnership between National Science Foundation and the National Endowment for the Humanities. And then currently, through NEH's Preservation and Access Education and Training Grant Program, National Breath of Life is providing advanced training and support to 5 communities through an apprenticeship program designed to increase community archive capacity and develop archive to dictionary pathways and support the development of language archivists in that sense. So, Jaya.
So for our project, we've shared it in various spaces, like different invited presentations or different conferences, like with American Indian Language Development Institute and recently COLANG. So we kind of share the project, like it's open and like it's available for people to go to, but we kind of share it with other language people working on Indigenous languages. Will talk about it and share it and answer questions about it. I'm like community side, I don't really care about, writing all the academic papers and everything, but one of our partners, Shannon Bischoff, he'll usually we'll work together and write a paper once in a while, talking about the project, talking about our relationship, working, doing this collaborative project, because it's between us as the community, but it's also, we have different partners at University of Arizona and Purdue. So it's like a project with non-tribal members. So we there's papers where we talk about how we work together and all that, and just some of the history of the project. So those are available as well.
Thank you so much. Okay, what is the current funding environment for Indigenous language programs in the US?
I'd like to just say it's slowly coming about. So that is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Something is happening. I'd like to maybe reference 1990, our mentioned earlier by, Daryl here about our Native American Languages Act. Lots of times you put things in black and white, but you really got to work on it, to get that black and white into, red, I guess, blood, something that's living and it's meaningful. So thank goodness for black and white, but also thank goodness for activists and people who are working and bringing it to the attention of our whoever we're referencing here. But definitely the wheel is turning, and I think the more like our examples here today can bring this to the fore, the more I think we will be supported. Mahalo. Thank you. And thank you, NEH, too.
Our funding model is pretty complex. I would say that we rely heavily on the Myaamia tribe of Oklahoma to support our tribe-specific activities. We rely heavily on external funding to be able to move National Breath of Life forward. And of course, because that work takes place within the context of a university, the Myaamia tribe of Oklahoma and Miami University that are now celebrating 50 years this year. We're very fortunate to be able, in that collaborative environment, to receive various kinds of support from Miami University as well. So.
I don't really have a lot to say about funding in general, but for us specifically, we're a program that's previously been like 100% grant funded, where our program used to get a grant, work on the project. Then once that was over, switch to another grant, work on another project. And it wasn't really going in a direction. It was just kind of just working towards what could be funded. So when I came on as manager, we had like a new director who realized, he was also a council member who realized how important language is to the tribe and sovereignty and everything, our culture. So he pushed to have us funded by the tribe because we weren't before. And since then we've been funded by the tribe, but then it's always scary because we don't know like year to year how that's going to go. And we do seek outside funding for specific projects. We're trying to do like our, like right here, the online resource center, and then we did funding for like teaching youth in the summer. So like for specific projects, but right now we are tribal funded and yeah, hopefully continued into the future.
Wonderful. All right, with the last couple of minutes, one final question. How can congressional offices support projects like this in their own districts and states?
I'd like to send out another mahalo to our representatives, you know, in our elected positions there at Washington and in our local governments as well, for paying attention a little bit more, and you know, you have to get their ear. So when we get their ear, we're saying, look at Kaniʻa, look what NEH did for us. Look at what these people are doing for us too. I mean, it's collaborative. So I think the big understanding of how important a language is to a people, and not only to the people, you know, even if we're just a little spot in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or wherever we are, it all means very big things for the rest of the world. So you know, humanities is what we're talking about when we talk about language. Language permeates and will continue as long as we can keep ourselves going as human beings. And other people, I mean, other living things have their own language, but we're talking about human language here. It permeates. So it is important, as we say in Hawaiian, ika olelo no keola a mekamake. In language is life and death. And that's very important. Mahalo.
I think a general awareness is useful to a point, but there has to be a recognition that tribes are from here. They're not from another place. This is our place. If these languages and these cultures are going to survive, it's going to be because they're supported in this place. And that support has to extend outside of our community. We're surrounded by a larger culture, multiple cultures, multiple languages, and we have to be able to create space. We have to be able to have resources to maintain our unique identities, as we say as Myaamia Tawengi in our Myaamia language, because that's who we are. And without that, it's hard for us to be a people without that language, without that culture. And it's going to take some time, as I've said before, to heal from the last 200 years. There were concerted efforts to stomp out these languages and cultures, and we're trying to recover from those episodes. And it's just going to take time, but it's important. It's important to our stability. If we're going to contribute to the building of this country, we have to be healthy people, and our language and culture are central to that process.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I agree with the awareness. Like, I don't think a lot of people they're like, oh yeah, language is important, but not aware of how connected it is to everything about who we are, and the knowledge that's embedded in languages that's important for not just us, but everybody, the different, even just how Indigenous people are so connected to their environment, and their language is so connected to our land, and the knowledge we have about our space we've lived in for so long, about like our plants, our medicines, our animals, our territory. Like there's so much information in these languages that we're still figuring out, still yet to find, that still can be lost. And it's not just important for us, it's important for everybody and anyone on this land. So I think it's important for people to understand it, and also to talk about the importance. It's hard because sometimes people even here don't understand our own people. So if they hear someone else out there talking about the importance, like, oh yeah, I think it is important, just having that awareness, someone else saying it. And always resources and funding and just help and time. Like, we are in a process of trying to bring our languages back and keep them going, but it is, like Daryl said, it's going to take a long time. It took a long time for them to be brought to the situation they are in now. Like, it took decades or even centuries to get here. So we're like gonna have to have a lot of time to get back to a better place with their languages.
All right, well, we're out of time. Thank you so much to all our participants for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. Thank you to Chair Lowe and Representative Chu for their words at the beginning of this briefing. And thank you to everyone who's attended. We hope that you've learned a little bit more about how important and how vital these programs are. Thank you.
Mahalo nui, thank you.